The U.S. and China meeting for a second day in Sweden to talk trade. This comes as the big EU deal was announced yesterday, and it could increase tariffs on other countries at the end of the week. Joining us now, former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is the chairman of the Alpha Institute. On set, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Mr. Former Speaker, that's too hard to say. Good to see you, Mr. Speaker. Kevin.
Yes.
How's Kevin?
Whatever you want to call me.
The journals never like tariffs, no matter what, obviously. So no matter what happens, I don't think they're ever going to say it's great. And their take today is basically that it's the reason that it's a positive is because the worst case scenarios have been avoided. It doesn't really look at it in a half full way at all. And yesterday, talking to different people from the other side, we had Roger Altman on, said just in general, it's a bad deal for the United States, in his view, because it's going to be inflationary, because it's still it's a higher tariff than we had before, and it could hurt growth. That's going to be what you hear. But even the Wall Street Journal doesn't say, wow, what a great deal. Is it a great deal?
I think it's a very good deal, because what you're finding is he's reshaping kind of the world economy, because what you're not talking about are these markets opening up to America products, which haven't happened in decades. So that's a fundamental difference going forward. I think what we find, people didn't think he could get this far. People didn't think these countries would come to the table. And so many of them are. So it's reshaping where we're going to look at.
The other things, I don't know if I'd say criticism, but just pointing out some of the things that weren't included in the deal were a lot of the things that the president really did want. And that, maybe the punitive treatment of a lot of our tech companies not addressed by Europe, the digital tax not addressed.
But remember what these are.
It doesn't get them to pay more for pharmaceutical drugs. In fact, we'll pay more because people here will pay more because there's going to be a tariff on drugs.
Now, remember what he's doing here at the same time, though. He's reshaping there. This isn't a trade deal like you would think in the past, where you spent years negotiating, went before Congress to get approved and everywhere else. This is a continual negotiation where the first thing he did was open it up. So it's kind of you're crawling before you're walking before you're running. Everybody was working against it, but think what he's been able to do in the first 6 months. I mean, I've watched a lot of people even come to this table and say, I was wrong. Kim Jong-un, the others. I've even heard people at the Wall Street Journal. They were wrong.
They're never going to like tariffs, no matter what. Let me ask you this. In the president's mind, does a permanent tariff regime, is he hot to do that because he thinks it will cause onshoring? Is that the idea?
I think his drive is more investment in America, onshoring, and you look at every one of these trade deals, there's some type of loan agreement or an investment into America from that country. And that actually determines.
Those were coming anyway because they've already wanted liquefied natural gas because they want to get off the.
But you're also looking at a number of companies that it moved from the last time he was in, from China, maybe to Vietnam, maybe to India. But now in this administration, he's moving them back to America. So every deal has something where they're making some investment in America, some idea of manufacturing their product in America as well. And long term, that benefits America.
Earlier today, the president, I guess on Truth Social, said fake news says that, I really want to have a meeting with President Xi. That's not true. I don't want to have a meeting, or I'm not planning that. It was the administration itself that sort of were putting out the notion that a final deal will only come probably when the president decides on certain things and when President Xi decides on certain things. And they need to get together to do that. Why do you think he's now saying that I'm not looking for that? Are things going badly?
I don't think things are going badly. They're back at the table. But the one thing I think this president has learned very well, the Chinese promise things and don't deliver it. They did it in the first administration, and they try to string you out. The same thing that Putin. And you watch that Putin had played President Trump wrong, that President Trump tried to give him an opportunity to come to the table. He didn't. And now it's a whole different situation. That was a mistake on Putin's part. What happens with Putin at this point, do you think? Now the timeline has been, it was September before, wasn't it? No? I watched what Medved put out the other day. He's always tries to do these extreme measures. I think Putin's realizing he's being encircled now, and he's got a real problem. That he had an opportunity here, and he tried to string it along. It was goodwill, and I think the President Trump has shifted on this and understands what Putin was doing, and he's not going to put up with it.
Some of the other things that, I mean, they got so many negatives. I hate to keep harping on it, but obviously.
Why do you focus on the negatives?
Because I have to. Because you're here. And yesterday with Roger Altman, I totally focused on how I thought he has no idea whether long term this is going to be a good deal or not. It could very well be a really good deal for the United States. I have to do both.
You play devil's advocate. I get you.
But even all of these big investments they don't help.
Okay, this is where everybody has misunderstood President
But they don't
Trump.
help the trade deficit. They add to the trade deficit.
Okay, everything of President Trump is a negotiation, and so he utilizes every avenue of every strength he has. And tariffs are a strength to open up different markets and do different tactics, be it immigration, be it purchasing more American products, and he utilizes that each time.
Okay, do you have concerns that we are more concerned about trade with China than defense? Because for a long time it seemed like Republicans and Democrats were pretty united in thinking that China was a threat and a risk, and we wanted to go after them no matter what, even if trade suffered as a result. It feels like we're a little softer on that position now, like we're more concerned with making sure we have good relationships and that the trade comes through in some way, shape, or form.
No, I will tell you, I think from a very bipartisan way. If you look at the Select Committee on China inside Congress itself, if you look at the fundamental reshaping of the Pentagon, knowing that we have to develop our weapons differently, the next war is going to start in space. The next war is going to who can overwhelm somebody. You can't spend a $10 million missile knocking down a drone. And everybody knew it, but nobody was taking action. And I think COVID opened up America to, we're too dependent upon China. I mean, if you study world history, 16 times the number 2 power has surpassed the number 1. Only 4 times did they not go to war. There's a lot of early indicators of what builds up to that and dependency. They're better prepared for this trade fight this time using the rare minerals, but it woke up America. Now we're opening up our minds. I think it's a mistake on their part.
A broader economic question.
Sure.
And it's really about our treasuries and who's going to buy them in a post-tariff world where I think the geopolitics of all this has just gotten a lot more complicated, including with China. I remember back in 2008 during the financial crisis, one of the great fears was that China was going to start dumping our treasuries. Well, guess what? They actually now are dumping our treasuries. Like, this is actually happening. How should we think about that? Not just about China, but who the future buyers of our treasuries ultimately may be, and what incentive they may have.
Interesting. It's not going to change the difference, but there is, if you looked at the Genius Act, I mean, Tether owns more treasuries than Germany does.
Yes, there's an argument to be made about
there's a new entrance that has filled that, but it won't fill the entire gap.
It won't, because just to be clear, because there is this argument people are making about how stable coins are going to create this sort of market for more treasuries. That's true, but what ultimately is going to happen is dollars are going to come out of banks in the U.S. and all the other places to buy said treasuries. So it's a circular kind of
No, but what you
situation.
get to is you were worried about a country dumping.
Right.
Stablecoin can't dump, because they got to back it behind. So there is a fulfillment there. But your real question is, how do you keep the dollar the world currency? I think the more that we go in and sanction, we're pushing countries to learn to go around the dollar. I think the President Trump has done a very smart move against the BRICS, what they were trying to do. But it all comes down to debt. That's why debt is our greatest threat to America. And
100%.
And you cannot avoid it any longer. The next president is going to have the debt crisis. And this is where Congress, and the challenge is, if you looked in the past, the Democrat had the blue dog. Those were Democrats who cared about debt. They're no longer there. No one in Congress has got elected saying they're going to balance the budget. The country has to be educated on this, and Congress is going to have to act, because Social Security in the next administration is either going to take a 24% cut or do something about it.
In terms of our expenses and what we take in, the tariffs are generating a lot of income. And in fact, the deficit doesn't look as bad, although the CBO can't use it. But why don't Republicans...
Doesn't look as bad. The deficit is bad.
I know, but why don't Republicans, instead of, still saying that, the foreign countries are going to pay the tariffs and we're going to make money, why not just call it what it is? What people want to tax corporate. It is raising revenue. It is raising revenue.
What you're also finding too.
But why not sell it as a positive that it is generating all this revenue? I think
you're hearing people talk about the revenue it's bringing in. It's
but they're
also
pretending
a tax when people decide what they want to buy. So they decide when they're taxed instead of just taxed across the board.
Right.
But the one thing you have to do is, if you're not tackling the big issues of the drivers of the debt, you're never going to solve this problem. And in 8 years, it automatically hits you.